This is for position. Goes around the outside. It's in his teammate.
Qualified.
Did you get a new hat?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll discuss that in a sec. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Barely Qualified, a Formula One podcast, the post-Dutch Grand Prix edition. We have a lot to get into. We're your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca, the man across the screen, sporting a brand new AMG, Mercedes, Petronas, whatever the fuck they're called, hat. Looking good, my man. That's Brandon Wood.
Yo, yo, yo. Yes, sporting my new camo AMG hat in honor of Mercedes.
Disappearing?
And their pace disappearing on Sunday after what looked to be a very promising start to the weekend. They had the momentum going into the summer break. They won the last 3 races going into the break, and here we come back and nothing but disappointment.
Sad. So sad. We have so much to get into. Not only do we have to break down the Dutch Grand Prix, but we have breaking news that just happened this morning with Williams announcing that Logan Sargeant has been replaced for the remainder of the season, which is a justified goodbye to his Formula One career. For the time being, he is being replaced by Argentinian F2 driver and Williams Academy driver. I'm going to butcher this name right now. Franco Colapinto? Colapinto. I was going to say Colapino. Franco Colapinto. This is really out of left field. Logan Sargeant getting replaced, not that big of a surprise, but his replacement, I think, is the big surprise here. A lot of people thought it was going to be Kimi Antonelli, maybe a Mick Schumacher, maybe even a Liam Lawson, as there was reports that James Vowles, team principal of Williams F1, was seen talking to Christian Horner, and everybody thought that maybe there was a little bit of conspiracy that Christian Horner was trying to get Liam Lawson into that seat. I don't know how you feel about this replacement. I don't know anything about Colapinto. I know he's currently P6 in the F2 standings. I like this move for Williams personally. I like that they're not kneeling down to the bigger teams and getting one of their development drivers in a seat. I like that they're keeping it in-house and giving this kid a shot. They're going to put him on display for the rest of the racing world for 9 more races of the season. He's not going to get a seat next year. I doubt. I mean, there's one more seat left at Sauber, I think. I doubt that's going to go to him, but they are putting him on display potentially for, some other series to get a good look at it. Maybe IMSA, maybe Le Mans, maybe a DTM. Who knows? Maybe IndyCar. I don't know. But I like the move. I don't know anything about him, like I said. But this is us bidding farewell to the lone Yankee on the grid, and probably for the foreseeable future, we're not going to get another American. Logan Sargeant, valiant effort, but in the end, buddy, you got to keep it on track.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this was a good move as far as their pick. Some of the other names that you mentioned, we had heard about for quite a while. We thought this could have even happened before the summer break. I'm a little surprised that it's happening now, one race after they've got back. Obviously, Logan's crash in that third practice kind of was pretty devastating for the team. They had some new upgrades that they came with the car, and those just went into the bin. So to see this happen here is very unfortunate for Logan, but I think it's a good move for the team. A little bit of self-preservation. Like I said, it's some of the other choices might have been a little more complicated. I don't know that putting Lawson in the car would really be their best choice. I mean, he'd be a great fill-in, but it wouldn't be for any long-term basis. And the word was that Red Bull could have taken him back at any time. So obviously they want to make something, put something in the car that's a little bit more of a secured pick. So giving Franco the opportunity to put some time in the car and maybe even put him in a good spot to be a reserve driver for next year, and lining them up to have like a good little set of drivers moving forward that they can rely on. They don't have to worry about what Mercedes has got planned and some other teams have got planned. So good on them. Overall, very disappointing weekend for them, coming in here with not only with Logan's disappointing performance, after Alex put the car in 8th place in qualifying, his car was ruled illegal because his floor was just a little bit too wide. I think it was like 0.3 millimeters or something like that. So very small margin, but just enough to completely ruin the good qualifying starting position that Alex had, especially at a track like this.
Yeah, they look
where,
like they were on points. Alex qualified P7, which would have been a great start for them, especially because it's a little bit more difficult to overtake at Zandvoort. Not impossible, but a little bit more difficult. He probably could have caused a DRS train that would have put him in the top 10, I think. So him getting disqualified, bad for him. Really bad for Logan Sargeant, too, when he doesn't even get to take part in qualifying because of the crash that he had in FP3, making, I think, the decision very easy right there. You know, the timeliness of it, like you said, not ideal coming out of the summer break, but the straw that broke the camel's back for sure was, you know, another self-inflicted error that just wrecked his car.
Yeah, apparently after that happened, James Vowles was keeping a very low profile over the weekend because some said that he was trying to avoid questions about Liam and what they were going to do. So,
Yeah.
you know, for this to happen now is not that surprising, but you know, hopefully this will be a step in the right direction for them. I'm looking forward to see what these upgrades actually do come Monza. This, you know, Zandvoort was supposed to be a good track for them, so hopefully they can rally this into the next race.
Yeah.
But back to Zandvoort and the Dutch GP.
Well, hold on. Before we get into that, before we get into the Dutch GP, I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about this.
Okay.
I do think that Williams will have a good showing at Monza. It's a high-speed track. It's the high-speed track, the Temple of Speed. This is where they shine. So hopefully they can, you know, rally with some new blood in there, a new identity. And just want to harken back to the idea that this is a good choice for them to do because it's a full investment in the Williams team, in the Williams Academy, and the drivers that they have in place, them fully investing in the team, which is good. Let's talk for a quick second about Logan Sargeant and his overall career in F1 or lack thereof. Do you think that he was better or worse than some of the bottom drivers that we've seen? The two I'm specifically talking about, or we can say three, in Nicholas Latifi, Nikita Mazepin, and Mick Schumacher. I think that his ceiling was a little bit higher. He showed at times to have a little bit more race pace, but became more of a liability. I think the easy way to put it is he had a higher ceiling because he did show some flashes of brilliance, some good racecraft, some good speed, but his floor was much lower because in the end he was wrecking that car on his own mistakes more often than I think all three of them combined, especially this season.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think some of that is just maybe just the pressure of the situation that he was in being a lot different than those other drivers that you mentioned. You know, the team, especially this year, was really trying to push to make some progress from where they've been the past few years, right? So, you know, with all the talk about who was going to come in and replace him and talk about that, I'm sure that had to just weigh heavy on his mind, right? And so every weekend after weekend, trying to, you know, fight against problems that he might have with the car, feeling uncomfortable, also tied in with you know, him fighting for his job, you know,
Yeah.
and I think it's just a tough thing to have to deal with, especially someone in his situation it's not like you know, he's paying to be there or he doesn't have a legacy that he can ride off of. So it's got to be tough for him now thinking about like what his options are, but at the same time, you know, this is, you know, like you said, there was glimmers of hope. He had showed a little bit of a high ceiling. I mean, his very first lap he did in Formula One was pretty amazing. I don't know if I've seen clips of it recently. Now that this has been a big story, but you know, he's had those moments where you're like, oh, I think there's something there. He can show some promise, but then, you know, when the pressure's really on, he just was never able to really capitalize.
He was never really able to compete at that next level and be consistent, especially in keeping up with his teammate Alex Albon. Was always behind the eight ball on that, and I think just kind of fell short of the benchmark of what you need to do to be a long-term F1 driver. But I will say this, you know, he didn't ever fall back and become the complete back marker of a Nicholas Latifi or a Nikita Mazepin, even though he was binning it over and over and over again. He was at least pushing himself and the car to the absolute limits that he could. And it just kind of got away from him time and time again. He at least gave it that effort, though, even though he wasn't able to literally keep the car on track. So in a way, it's disappointing that we lose the only Yankee, but I think we as Americans, and this might be a little corny, might be a little bit of nationalism here, but we can be proud that he at least gave it 110%. And that 10% is what drove him into the wall.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if he lands on his feet here in IndyCar next season.
Yeah. Logan,
I'll be watching.
We salute you.
Alrighty. Back to the race. I mean, we thought McLaren was gonna, come in back from the break and be showing that they could fight up at the front against especially the Red Bulls, but not, Mercedes and Ferrari maybe and a little bit of back foot, but still showing that it's not over. But this weekend, McLaren with their new upgrades just showing that they know how to make an upgrade work. I think they're probably one of the only teams this year that's been able to just consistently add performance to the car and not take any real steps backwards. Max nabs pole by
was Lando got pole.
All right, that's what I meant. That's what I meant to say. Lando gets pole by what was it? Third of a second, almost half a second, something like that. Which at this,
just over half a second.
Yeah, which at this track, this track, which is pretty short, that's a pretty substantial margin. So we knew that they had the pace there, and you and I were texting right before the race or after qualifying. We're saying, okay, what are the odds that Lando loses this off the start? So we knew coming in that Lando is probably going to have a little bit of a tough go at the beginning of the race, but as he said after the race, once he got a few laps in, after Max had taken the lead at the start, he noticed that Max wasn't really pulling away. So he knew that if he just stayed in there and waited for his opportunity, he'd be able to take the lead again and ride off into the sunset, which he did.
Lap 15, I think it was, he overtook Max, and then it was over from there. Going back to that start, both McLarens got a pretty bad start. It looks like they got a little bit of wheel spin, and both of them had not a delayed reaction because Lando's reaction time was actually exactly on pace with Max. It was the exact same start time, but the cars themselves just seemed to really, like I said, spin out, and they didn't get a great launch. George overtakes Oscar right off the start. Max overtakes Lando. Oscar had a little bit rougher of a time throughout the race than Lando did. Didn't quite have the overall pace. Still had a decent race, but he had some things to say about both of their starts, which, is a good sign for Lando that it wasn't just his fault, even though I think you can still point a little bit of a finger at him and say, you got to be Beto. But yeah, he overtakes Max lap 15 and then gets a 20-second gap ahead of the rest of the field and is gone. So something that we've been waiting to say. We've said, Lando victory, but Lando Norris dominant victory in Formula One. Beautiful sentence right there.
Yeah, if you actually look back at the starting grid, it was like all the drivers that started on the racing line, like all the odd numbers, they all lost a position off the start. So it seemed as though like that racing line was actually had a little bit less grip than the off racing line that a lot of the other half of the grid started on. So
interesting.
That could have been a little bit of a factor. But yeah, once Piastri got stuck behind George there after George got him off the start, he ended up losing a lot of time. I think lost a bit of his tire advantage that he would have had, a little bit later on. So, Oscar was just kind of like compounding things that he kind of just got put back a little bit. So you could say maybe McLaren missed out a little bit on maximizing their full potential. Had Oscar gotten off a better start, started right behind Max, he could have potentially gotten a 1-2 for the team. Pace was definitely there in the car. Lando showing that getting the fastest lap on his old set of hards at the end of the race. He beat Lewis by like a tenth
Mhm.
the second. Lewis was on the softs, so just overall impressive drive from Lando. Performance from the team was great. Oscar, like you said, feels like there's a little bit left on the table there, but he still should be pretty happy with bringing it home.
Yeah,
The way he did.
P4 finish. He misses out on a podium by just over 2 seconds. I think it's 2.1 that he finished behind Charles Leclerc, who also had a good race. He had a solid race. And then big shout out to Carlos Sainz. He qualifies P10 and moves it up to P5. He was kind of, I don't want to say this race was boring, but it wasn't the most action-packed race outside of, the excitement of Lando completely pulling away from the pack. The rest of the action was all on Carlos Sainz, who did the majority of the overtaking in this race. So big shouts to him. What else is there to really go over with this race?
I mean, the big thing to me was, especially with the Ferraris, was the surprising change in pace for them, and it was a flip flop that the Mercedes had throughout the the start of the weekend. They were showing a really good pace. I think Lewis was on top in like the first two practice sessions. Then just come qualifying, they weren't able to get it together. It was a lot of it was about getting the tire in the right window. At the right time and all that stuff and dealing with the traffic. But come on the race day, Mercedes kind of caught off guard with a lack of pace. They had both had completely different setups. And I think George ended up getting penalized a little bit more in the race as opposed to Lewis for that, even though George's setup gave him a little bit more pace in the straights compared to Lewis, which Lewis was complaining about that a lot through the race. He was slow in the straights, and that could have just been conditions and with where their car is at. But on the inverse, Ferrari is coming in looking not very promising. We're equally surprised by their pace on Sunday, except for them, it was much faster, and they were able to undercut. Charles was able to undercut two cars and was helped out a little bit by George Russell's slow stop, but still nonetheless was able to get those tires into the right window to be able to make it the most of that undercut, and then brings it home and get that podium finish. Was able to hold off Oscar, like we said. Oscar kind of penalized a little bit by being stuck behind George in the beginning. But yeah, it was enough to bring home another podium for Charles Leclerc. It's the 7th of the year. So turning it around a little bit, I think heading forward to Monza, I'm really excited to see what they're going to bring. I know last year this was one of our favorite races, getting to see the two Ferraris battle it out. I mean, obviously Carlos reeling out that podium at the end. I want to see what they're going to bring this weekend. Are they going to how about pull out all the stops?
I think the answer is like
engine.
It's a definitive yes. This seems to be like, I mean, we can sit here and be like, oh, it's a surprise that Ferrari suddenly has a little bit more pace, but this is kind of becoming the trend for them that as soon as Monza rolls around, suddenly Ferrari has a little extra pace. And I'm here for it, man. Put on a show. This is your guys' home race. Give the Tifosi something to cheer about. They do look good. I think going into Monza, we should have another three-way fight between teams. And if Checo can show up, we might have a 6-way fight between drivers, which is great. I expect Mercedes to pick the ship back up. Ferrari's looking good. McLaren's looking good. Oh, 4-way fight between teams, and then potentially an 8-way fight between drivers. So Temple of Speed should be rocking.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to a little bit of luck, a little bit of perseverance. Yeah, I mean, my eyes are going to be to McLaren. Obviously, I think they got the best shot. I think well, also looking forward to the rest of the year, thinking about it now. Red Bull, I mean, this is their one. I think this is probably going to be the track that suits them the best of the rest of the remaining tracks. So, I think it's important for both cars here to get a good result. I think Max is going to be a little bit more comfortable than he was last weekend. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and they had better hope for a good result because I think it's more than game on for the Constructors' Championship. It's looking like if things continue to go the way that they're going, that McLaren's going to have the Constructors' Championship sewn up. But if Red Bull can just continue to eke out just enough points and get things done, maybe they'll stay in the fight. But like you said, this is going to be a track suited to them, so this is going to be a big benchmarker for whether or not they can hold on to that title. I do think McLaren's going to end up taking it. But speaking of which, with Lando taking this victory in such dominant fashion, I think we can also say that the Drivers' Championship is still very much on. A lot of things have to go right for Lando Norris, but this is a race right now where McLaren can definitively say we need to put all of our eggs in the Lando Norris basket. So Oscar Piastri from here on out has to play the teammate role. He's got to do the Valtteri Bottas. He's got to do the Sergio Perez, helping his teammate out to do everything he can to continue to get 25 points per race. We were talking about this after the race. I did the math. I can crunch some numbers. If the rest of the season goes with a Lando Norris P1 gaining 25 points per race and Max Verstappen finishing P2 getting 18 points per race, Max Verstappen will win the Drivers' Championship by 7 points, the exact number of points Lando Norris gave up when they swapped cars in Hungary. You just couldn't write this shit, and that's not fastest lap included, but that is what it could shake out to. The window of probability that it happens that exact way, tiny, right? It's more likely or not that Lando's not going to win every race and Max Verstappen's not going to finish P2 in every race. But that is a mathematical scenario that's on the table.
Did that include sprint races?
I didn't factor in sprint races in that.
Because I think with the sprint races, Lando can take it by 1 point.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
So yeah, it's still on. As far as I'm concerned, it's still on. I mean,
and we have
Sebastian
sprint races.
Vettel,
We have sprint races. Go ahead.
I was going to say Sebastian Vettel has done it before, coming back from the summer break and winning 9 races in a row. And people weren't expecting it then. So we saw Red Bull win a number of races in a row last year. So we know it's possible.
Yeah. And
it's possible.
I think with the 20-second margin that they put up this last week is in good faith that it can be done. They can win out here. They've shown that, Red Bull is far enough behind and they're far enough ahead that there's a chance. There is a chance. And then, if Max Verstappen DNFs or he takes that engine penalty that is oncoming and doesn't have a good weekend after that, it's wide open. And it's very, very exciting.
What is the likelihood that we see him settling for like a second or third place when he knows maybe a win is in the wings, and but at the risk of causing a collision or ruining his tires or something like that? Like where do you feel like Max is at mentally when it comes to his calculations for the championship? Is he just going to say DGAF like at every point like we've maybe seen in the past, or do you feel like he might be a little more calculated now?
I would answer that by not giving an answer and saying that he should be more calculated. The smart thing to do would just be to settle and ride the rest of the season out, gaining however many points you can safely. But knowing Max Verstappen, there's going to be a couple instances where he's going to go all out and he's going to fully send it, and that might cause a collision between him and whoever's in P2 or P1.
Yeah, because if he wins like the next 2 races and like has a comfortable margin, I think he is more likely to just settle back into that. Yeah, but until it's like he knows it's secure, like he's going to be fighting to win every time.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I could be wrong. But I feel like until it's like it's not mathematically possible, he's going to be just doing whatever he can to win, as long as it's there, right? I mean, like this past weekend, he didn't really have anything to fight off Lando at all. So he didn't seem like he really tried, and he did actually kind of settle a little bit, So kind of has to work with what he's given, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw that cool down shot of Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen talking about the moment they knew that their race was not over, but that it was the top step on the podium was out of reach. They kind of literally were just doing like a hand gesture, like, and he's gone, and
yeah,
they just settled
Outta
in.
here. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of good, exciting stuff on the horizon here for the rest of the season. Do you want to get in some props and flops?
Let's do it. I think my props are going to go to Pierre Gasly.
Oh wow.
Overall, great weekend for him. Really good showing for his new team principal, Oliver Oakes, coming from the high tech team. So good weekend for him. 8th place, some good points for that team, especially with where they're at and compared to his teammate and where he finished over the weekend. Pierre getting the news that he's going to have a new teammate next year in Jack Doohan, who I'm excited about.
Oh, that's right. We didn't even touch on that.
Well deserved for Jack. I think he's shown to be a good asset for the team this year. He's very, I think he's going to be a great fit for the team. So
yeah, we got to give a little bit of a prop to Jack Doohan there too, because I think it was it could have been an easy choice to go for a more established driver, somebody else who has like bringing in a K-Mag or a who knows who, but.
Yeah, they were trying to sign Carlos. It was kind of the reason we're finding out about Jack being signed now was because they were waiting until after Carlos sealed up his deal. So,
and you got to give props to Jack Doohan for this is going to be his first full-time drive in F1, and a lot of guys in his position who ended up sitting out in a reserve driver role after their F2 career came to a close. You don't really hear from them anymore. It looks like Callum Ilott is going to be in IndyCar for the foreseeable future, probably for the rest of his racing career. Who else? Like Mick Schumacher's time came to an end. Felipe Drugovich never really got a shot after winning the F2 championship. So if there's not a window of opportunity for a lot of guys, they sort of just seem to fade out. Jack Doohan kind of just stayed in the shadows. He did a little bit of media. He retained his role as a reserve driver for Alpine. And lo and behold, you wait it out, you get rewarded in the end. So good on Jack Doohan for sticking it out long term. My prop is going to go, obviously, to Lando Norris. That's the obvious one, but you can't ignore it when you win your second F1 race and you do it in such dominant fashion. We haven't seen somebody win by 20 seconds since Max Verstappen. I don't even think this year. Not that I can remember.
Yeah, I think it's like the most dominant win of this regulation era, right? I think.
Well, Max had a couple 20-second wins
but this
last
is
year.
22 seconds, so I think it was up there. But nonetheless, really good showing.
Go ahead.
You're saying? No, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, great showing from Lando.
I was agreeing with you.
And I tip my cap to you, sir. So go ahead and give me your flop.
My flop. I think, I want to give it to Logan, but I feel like that's kicking a man when he's down. So I'm just going to give it to the team. Williams, you guys got a flop for this weekend. Much was made about they were changing their whole production system, and there was some delays and parts because of that, and they were coming into this weekend with some new upgrades, looking to really make the difference, and it looked like it did make the difference, only for it to be thrown out because they couldn't get the measurements right.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a bad look if this is one of the big things you're trying to change, and yet you guys can't even get the measurements right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm sure it's got to be a little more complicated than just measuring twice and cutting once, but it's just like such a small thing to get disqualified for. You know what I mean? I think it's a really disappointing.
Yeah, when the rules are clearly,
I think it killed a lot of momentum that they could have been building off of from this
absolutely.
weekend, so.
When the rules are clearly stated, and you guys, you're a multi-million dollar F1 team. I know you've got tape measures in there, They know you've got eyes. You can see that you're over the limit. Easy fix there, and they find a way to muck it. I think I'm on board with you being, that the easy choice here to flop would be Logan Sargeant completely ruining his final 9 races of an F1 career that he could have just played it safe, just bring the car home. My flop, however, is going to go to Zhou Guanyu. Just an abysmal performance throughout the entire weekend. He finishes 1 second behind his teammate in qualifying, and then 2 laps and then some behind the rest of the pack in the race. Just absolutely nowhere. To say he's phoning it in isn't even, doing justice to how poor his performance was. And the whole Sauber team, honestly, it looks like they're driving a Formula 2 car. They have absolutely no pace. It's sad to see. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with that team, with their transition going into Audi, but it's not looking good. And their clear second seat driver is looking even worse. So this is going to probably be a preemptive goodbye to Zhou Guanyu and his Formula 1 career here too. He'll finish out the rest of the season, but at what cost?
Yeah, nothing to write home about at all. And it seems as though, like you said, there's something going on with the team. They've got some kind of ball and chain there that's holding them back. And I don't know. Let's just hope they get it figured out before next year. So.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, I want to discuss something. You sent me an article on Instagram of NASCAR driver Kyle Larson stating that in any other series outside of an open wheel race, in an Indy car or a Formula 1 car, that he would dominate 3-time world champion Max Verstappen in any other racing series. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends what it is. I don't think that there's I don't know. I don't know where exactly their skills overlap. I don't know. If you throw them both in a rally car, what's going to happen? I don't know. Maybe Larson would be a little more adapt to it because he's had similar, or had more experience in a similar type of driving style. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not as familiar with all of his accomplishments, so I don't know. I just think it's also kind of just a little bit of we'll never actually find out, so I can just kind of just say whatever I want.
It'll never happen. I mean, Max Verstappen has said that he wants to venture out into other racing series when his F1 career comes to a close, which may be sooner than most of us anticipate or want. But I'm going to say this, like you said, I don't know a whole lot about Kyle Larson. I also don't follow NASCAR too closely. I think he stands currently in P3 in the NASCAR standings, behind Joey Logano, I think, and I couldn't even tell you. Somewhere in there, though. But I would say that NASCAR is the only series where I think Kyle Larson could beat Max Verstappen. I think Max Verstappen could step into a rally car, an IMSA, a DTM, any of those, and probably best Kyle Larson. On any sort of race that takes place, or any sort of series that takes place on a road course, I think that Max would dominate him.
I mean, one way to solve this is Kyle Larson just needs to get an iRacing rig, and then they can race any type of cars on there.
Yeah.
And then they can solve it that way.
Yeah, let's not forget Max Verstappen spends a lot of time in simulators for series across the board. So,
right. So, I mean, I would say Kyle Larson, get on iRacing and put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, let's settle that dispute. That would be fun. That'd be a nice, fun off-season thing. Maybe they could take place in, the Race of Champions over in Finland or wherever it is, Sweden.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, settle this in the snow.
They need to do like a postseason exhibition sim race with all the drivers, and you throw some others in there.
Yeah, take like a best of from every series and then have them all race, like a tournament in each different series in iRacing, and then do a collective points at the end and see who comes out on top. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the Triple Crown, iRacing Triple Crown or something.
There you go. Hell yeah. All right. Other than that, go ahead.
Did you hear about they're going to do the rookies race at the end of the year?
No, who is?
They're going to do Formula 1. They're talking about doing running an exhibition race with all the teams where they have a rookie driver in the car.
Oh, no. That's awesome. Where did you hear that?
I just seen it floating around on the internet, so I don't know like what stage of negotiations it's in. Like to me, it sounds like a good idea.
That's
I know
brilliant.
logistically, and where do you come up with the money for that? Like all the teams, they're gonna have to spend some amount of money to do that, and where does that come from? Does it come out of their budget for the year, or does that as an extra allotment that they get to be able to do? I don't know. So it's not as like worked out from what I understand, but it does sound interesting, and I think it would be a good idea, especially if they're looking to give more opportunities for drivers that are coming in. Like get Antonelli and all those guys in there to have a little bit of running in the current era of car before hopping into next year's car. So
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Formula One, what they should do is they should take all the broadcast money that they gain from it, just take a hit on not allocating that, or not, taking a net positive from the broadcast, and then just pushing that right back into the teams as the funds to put on something.
well,
like
I don't
that.
know. You're asking for kind of a lot now.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I
asking
don't
for a favor from Formula One that we don't really get too often. But if they
Yeah.
want to put this on, and they're the ones that are kind of probably coming up with the idea just to put on an extra show, they should be the ones to have to shell out the cash.
Yeah, well, I'm highly doubtful on that, but
Maybe.
anyways,
A boy can dream.
on to Monza. I'll be getting my my sauce started now. A little pomodoro
Ooh.
gonna make, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. This has been Barely Qualified, a Formula One podcast, the post-Dutch Grand Prix edition. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.